Welcome to Fraser and Dieter's Culture of Compliance podcast series. I'm Sabrina Serafin, partner and national practice leader of Fraser and Dieter's Process Risk and Governance Department. Today we're talking about business email compromise, and our guest is Skeet Spillane of Pillar Technology Partners. Pillar Technology Partners focuses on cutting-edge cybersecurity and compliance solutions. Welcome back to the podcast, Skeet.
Thank you very much.
Let's start with the basics and what you mean by business email compromise specifically.
Well, business email compromise is an attack that hackers will use to try and attack your organization by stealing the credentials of your email account and then monitor or leverage your account to send other emails so that they can try and defraud yours or your clients' businesses. They typically come in through a phishing attack where a email is fraudulently built to make it look like it's a legitimate email and has a specific ask of the person receiving the email to perform an action so that they can compromise that account.
Skeet, do you have some examples of some of the more sophisticated phishing schemes that you've seen?
Everyone knows of the Nigerian prince, and everyone knows about the phishing cards, I'm hoping, because those seem to come out every holiday season where the CEO asks you to perform a task and go purchase gift cards for their customers and hand it back to them with all of the credentials, and they will use that to steal those gift cards and go use them fraudulently. But a more sophisticated attack that we've seen recently is where the attackers will portray themselves as internal support staff, and they'll be asking for validation of passwords or passing on links so that you actually go to a support site for something that you need to do for your company's specific platform. And they've become more sophisticated in their look and feel, in that a lot of times they don't use a external address because they don't care if you respond to that address. They're looking for you to click on the link, so they really dress it up to make it look like a legitimate email from inside of your company.
So typically someone who is trusted, that the individual has worked with before to solve solutions, so it's not unusual to have that individual reach out and ask for this type of information.
Exactly. The attackers are trying to leverage your trust and your willingness to please and your feeling of requirement to comply with a request. So they take advantage of that psychological and social engineering aspect to try and compromise you into falling for the fraudulent scheme.
So let's take a look at it from the bad guy's perspective. Could you walk us through the steps of a business email compromise attack?
There's a lot of different tactics used during an email attack. They could be anywhere from a phishing attack, which is very broad and general, to a spear phishing attack where they've built a portfolio on the person they're trying to attack. They may know where they went to school and there's acting like an alumni association, or it may be about a kid's sport or something that they found on the internet through Facebook or LinkedIn or others. They will leverage that into an attack that they will then send that email across and try and deliver malware or ransomware to compromise the machine or try and compromise the credentials. And the scams they're trying to use can be anything from false invoice schemes, where they act like they're a customer trying to get their routing credentials changed so that they can get the invoice rerouted to someplace else. They may be CEO fraud, where they're acting as the CEO asking for an activity to be performed. It could be where they are trying to act like the attorney forcing a legal case or threat of suit or other types of measures that elicit a response. And then there's also the one that has been going around quite a bit lately, which is the payroll scams. Payroll scams are where they're acting as an employee, asking the manager of the accounting department to change their bank information so that they route their payroll information into a new account. This is a very common attack and has been very successful for a lot of the attackers out there. But typically, all of those roll into several different steps that occur all the time. First thing they do is they target you. They're trying to build a dossier on your company, on the individual. They're trying to understand things like I was saying about Facebook posts or LinkedIn posts, understand where you went to school, where your kids go to school, where you are, and all this information is publicly available. They will build this dossier on the target, and then they start to groom them. They'll send over an email that just tries to test the waters and see how it responds. And if they get a response back, in a lot of cases, that means you're on the hook already, and they will continue that conversation. I have seen where users inside had multi-day conversations with an attacker. They were very patient and pretending to be the CEO, and they were talking about the kids and all the other aspects of their lives and made it feel very comfortable and familiar to the payroll manager, and then executed a payroll change. That's when they actually launched the attack. So they make the ask for what they want to have happen. The exploit is really in your hands as the consumer. Once you fall for that and you execute their command, the exploit has occurred. From that point on, you're really in loss and cleanup. You're engaging with your insurance provider. You're having to possibly engage law enforcement. You may have to notify external parties, whether it's regulators or customers, of what has actually happened. So it's a long cleanup process. And in a lot of cases, that money is long gone before you even realize that you were scammed.
We're hearing about this kind of malfeasance pretty frequently. How common is this type of attack truly?
Very common. It is the number one threat vector for companies today. About 60% of attacks occur in small business, but it is happening on a very frequent basis. The FBI states that globally losses associated with business email compromise are about $12.5 billion, $1.2 billion in the US. And they're estimating that only about 10 to 12% of those are actually reported. Criminals are really trying to do this for one primary reason. It's very profitable. When you look at what your data is worth out there on the dark web, you'll see that a Social Security and date of birth verification is $3 per record. 1 million compromised emails and passwords, that's $25 per file.
And what you're saying is this is what individuals on the dark web are specifically going to find, and that's what they're paying.
That's correct. And they will go out there and they will take those. And the challenge on the compromised emails and passwords is they will take that and launch that into further email and compromised attacks on other organizations and businesses, potentially even your clients. So they will use those. Other situations are where they're actually selling those on the dark web. They will compromise your health records internally, and they'll sell them for approximately $50 per record. The really scary part of this to me is that for small businesses, 50% of small businesses that are breached fail within 6 months following the attack.
Really?
Yes, it's very detrimental when you lose the trust of your customers.
A lot of the examples, Skeet, that you gave earlier were very reasonable examples of day-to-day business operations that people would expect to have come across their email. What should people look out for to protect themselves against a scam when a lot of the scams really revolve around activities that they perform on a regular basis?
There's a lot of things you can do. The first is educating your users on what does an attack look like. What is a bad email? What does a phishing email look like? In a lot of cases, they're coming from a foreign country and they're translating it through Google Translate, and they will have poor grammar. They may be asking for information that's not personal. Instead of asking Sabrina, they may say, "Dear ma'am," or other types of things in the salutation. There will be triggers within the email itself that you can look for, and educating your users as to what those are very important. But a follow-on to that too is if there's ever an ask that's financial, it's very important to make sure that those are confirmed out of the technology band. If someone asks you to change a payroll information and it's an emergency and they have to do it now, pick up the phone and call them. Don't do it through an email transaction. Make sure that you talk to them directly. Make sure that you understand that it is them requesting that. And in most cases, a good control on that is making sure that there's a request process that uses a form and other things. If they're asking for something out of the normal control band, then you want to challenge that and make sure that you're doing that. There's also creating a culture of healthy paranoia, making sure that you have all your users understand that there are bad actors out there. There are bad people out there and they're trying to get to you. Make sure that they're questioning everything that comes across and that not only does it seem legitimate, but you can verify that it's legitimate. In addition to the user side of the equation, there's a lot of things you can do within the technology suite that will help protect your company and your assets from an attack. You can implement multi-factor authentication, which is where there's a challenge and response. Maybe you have to type in a code. You can implement what we call internet tags. In the routing information of your email, you can have it flagged so that if it comes from outside of your email domain, it says this is external. That's a fantastic one. We've had a lot of success in that because it educates the users to say, if this comes from Sabrina, who's in my company, but it says external, I know there's something wrong with that email. And then blocking the bad stuff, using secure email gateways that make sure that they're filtering all of those phishing emails. They know what bad addresses are. There are a lot of companies out there, Proofpoint and Mimecast are a couple that I go to a lot, where they're able to lock down a lot of the bad emails coming in before they ever reach your users. And that can help a lot because now you're dealing with a much smaller threat profile. The other one that I am a big proponent of is making sure that you not only patch all your systems, but that all of your endpoints have an advanced malware protection platform on them. Those are ones that use artificial intelligence, and they're looking at the patterns of behavior of actions on the computer, not just matching it to a signature file or a pattern that the antivirus may have had.
Earlier you mentioned a culture of healthy paranoia. As a user, I understand that I should be questioning certain items that come through my email box. Please tell us more about what an organization can do to support that culture.
One of the biggest targets in the organization from a phishing campaign tends to be the C-suite, the CEO, the CFO, the COO, because they elicit a response from the average user. So in order to establish that healthy paranoia in the organization, they have to know that they're able to operate and question any of these types of transactions. In order for that to be effective, it has to come from that C-suite. They have to understand that it may not be a statement and a response. If someone challenges them back and says, did you ask for this? They have to understand that that is an employee trying to protect the assets of them and their clients. It's a very important aspect of security to ensure that the C-suite is part of the solution, not part of the problem.
Well said. Thank you, Skeet, for being with us today and for helping us to explore the problem of business email compromise. And for our audience, thank you for listening to Fraser and Dieter's Culture of Compliance podcast. And please join us for our next episode where we continue to look at compliance as a competitive advantage for your organizations.
Thanks for listening to one of Fraser and Dieter's branded podcasts. To learn more, connect with us on LinkedIn or visit us at FraserDieter.com and be sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode.